Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. The president literally threw out the script today. He went down to West Virginia to speak in an event that was supposed to be about tax reform, but he wound up talking about immigration instead. Here's part of it.
With us, it's a lottery system. Pick them out, a lottery system. You can imagine what those countries put into the system. They're not putting their good ones. And remember my opening remarks at Trump Tower when I opened. Everybody said, oh, he was so tough. And I used the word rape. And yesterday it came out where this journey coming up, women are raped at levels that nobody's ever seen before. They don't want to mention that.
Well, that line's leading the nightly news across the country tonight. Here in Washington, it drove people completely crazy. How dare he tie immigration to rape? That's slander. Obviously, it's racist. He's not allowed to say that. As one CNN correspondent put it a minute ago, Trump, quote, doesn't tie himself to standards of fact and objectivity. He simply decides to say these things. Maybe he saw them on Fox News or watching Alex Jones. His habit is to repeat them regardless of them being consistently disproven. Okay, maybe he saw that on Fox. Maybe Trump was reading the Huffington Post, actually. Because just a few years ago, before they started lying full-time, the people in charge were slightly less anxious to change the subject. Here, for example, is a verbatim September 2014 headline from HuffPo. Quote, 80% of Central American women and girls are raped crossing into the U.S. 80%. So yes, there are rapists out there, uncomfortable as that fact may be for some to admit. Immigration affects public safety, and anyone who denies that is ignorant or dishonest. And yet a lot of people do deny it. Confront them with reality and they call you names. They denounce you. Diversity is our strength, they screech, as if that settles the conversation by itself, like a magic talisman. They don't want to know the details. Facts are a threat to their fantasies. They don't want you to know the details either. Shut up and obey. Those are their orders. But no matter what they say, facts don't go away. They persist, despite official attempts to erase them. And here are some facts about the state of California. Democratic Senator Kamala Harris has called her state the future of America, and she may be right. California has, for generations, been on the leading edge of national trends in this country. So looking at California, what does it tell us about our future? Well, in California right now, more than 6% of the entire state is there illegally. That's about 2.5 million people. 1 million of those have state driver's licenses. Politicians in California are very proud of that fact. That has issued a press release to brag about what a great place California is for illegal aliens. And by the way, they're right. Compared to Oaxaca, it is a great place. It's way better. But what is California like for everyone else? 44% of Californians now do not speak English at home. The state no longer has a common language or a common culture. Its infrastructure is collapsing. Debt is out of control. Schools are unusable. Public spaces are filthy. The middle class is fleeing California for all of those reasons. Normal people can't live there anymore. In 2016, more than 100,000 Californians left. Housing prices are out of control. Wages are too low to keep up. The state increasingly consists of tech oligarchs and their imported low-wage servants. That's the point. California is developing the economic structure of Latin America. How long before it's Venezuela? You're not supposed to think about any of that. Our leaders command you not to. Send the National Guard to protect the borders? Why would we do that? As Morning Joe reminded us just today, border crossings are down. But that's a lie. Like much of what you hear right now. It's untrue. Last month, more than 50,000 illegal immigrants were caught at our border. That's 3 times as many as were apprehended in the same month last year. Things are getting better. Go to California and see for yourself. As Kamala Harris says, it's our future. Ali Noorani is executive director of the National Immigration Forum, and he joins us tonight. So here's just a broad question, and I'm glad you're back. You've been on the show a number of times. You've made the case, it's a pretty common case, that immigration, low-skilled immigration included, makes us richer. If that is true, why does a state with the highest number of immigrants, legal and illegal, the highest proportion of immigrants, now have more poverty than any other state and is almost $1 trillion in debt? Why isn't it working there?
Well, in California, you have an economy that is the 6th largest economy in the world. And I'm not going to say that California doesn't have its share of challenges, but those challenges are not to be laid at the feet of the immigrant community. There are challenges that come with a fast-growing economy that is, quite frankly, presenting challenges for everybody. So there are a lot of policy changes that can be put into place to help everybody prosper in California, but let's not, blame
but you're
the
sort of,
immigrant
but hold
for
on, wait,
being a part of the
I'm not blaming anybody. I'm actually asking asking you to defend the argument that you've made on this show and that many others like you make every day, which is that America becomes more prosperous because of our immigration policy. Here's the state that has more immigrants than any other, and it's getting poorer. So I'd like to ask you to account for your position, if you would.
So when you look at the agricultural community in California, it is easily the largest agricultural sector in the country that is driven by and large by the immigrant community. The rest of the country has a hard time eating without the Mexican, the Latino.
But that's not true. That's not true. Well, California agriculture has become increasingly mechanized over the years. I'm from there. I have ag people in my family. There, it requires less labor now than it did 50 years ago.
When I talk to growers in California, they're looking for labor to pick crops, such as strawberries, melons. These are not crops that you can pick with a machine, Tucker. I mean, you know that. So
strawberries are one of the few crops that you can't look. Agriculture needs labor. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying it needs less labor than it did 50 years ago. Yet the state has far more immigrants.
Then why are growers looking for? Then why are growers actually leaving crops in the ground? Because
look,
they don't
I'm not attacking. Look, there are water problems in California. There are land use problems. There are a lot of problems in California. Labor is one of them. But the truth is, you have argued consistently on this show that letting in more people from other countries with low education levels will make us richer. We have a case study in stark relief called California, and the opposite has happened. So I really think the onus is on you to give a real explanation, not tell me that agriculture brings a lot of poor people, and that's not true. And you know it's not true.
So what happens in California, again, sixth largest economy in the country, is that you have immigrants who are coming, working alongside American workers and their families, whether it's in the tech sector or in the agricultural sector. In both sectors, immigrants are helping create jobs in California. I mean, Tucker, you're trying to lay the problems and challenges.
I'm not. What I'm doing is asking. Hold on, no. What I'm asking for is an adult conversation, which is what you and others are trying. No, because you're not. You literally just stared to the camera like I'm some kind of moron and said it's the ag sector that's driving immigration to California. I know the numbers. That's not even untrue. It's ridiculous. So here's my other question: if California is a paradise, why is the middle class leaving? Why did 100,000 people move last year over a 7-year period? 675,000 more people moved to other states from California than moved into California. Why is that happening?
This is a because in California you have a state that has, or a state that has all these incredible land use and zoning issues that you just talked about, Tucker. Again, this is not a problem that is at the immigrant community's feet. This is a problem that is facing California overall, and this is these are the challenges that comes with such amazing economic growth. If
it's so amazing, then why are people leaving? People who were born there are leaving. Let me ask you one last question, since I don't think you're going to concede that immigration has any role in any of this, which, with respect, is dishonest, and we both know it is. But let me ask you this. Irrefutably, 44% of California households do not speak English at home. Does that bother you at all? Do you think that long-term that suggests problems ahead, a state in which there's no common language? Do you think that possibly could cause problems there?
So when you talk to educators, when you talk to families across the state of California, you see that they are looking to learn English because they understand that if they learn English, they get a better job, their children have a better lot in life. So the fact is that the immigrant community in California and across the country is waiting in line to learn English. I mean,
then why is that number rising every year? Every year you have a higher percentage of households in California that don't speak English. So if what you said is true, why is that fact true? Because both can't be true.
Because you have more and more people who are looking to actually learn the language, which is, I think, the ultimate way to become American.
And yet more and more who don't know it. Magic. Okay. I'm sorry. Look, I just want to have a fact-based conversation. Nobody else does. You're a racist. Oh, whatever. But, like, this is real.
Nobody said that, Tucker. No, I didn't say that. Tucker, let's not put words in my mouth. I mean, we're talking about the economy.
I don't think that you said that, and I didn't mean to suggest that you did.
Okay, thank you.
And I didn't. But many people say that, and it short circuits the conversation. Anyway, Ali, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Well, the administration pushing ahead with plans to deploy the National Guard along the U.S. border. Ronald Botelho is acting Deputy Commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, where he has served since 1985, amazingly, considering how young you look. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to ask you a kind of negative relief question. You're hearing increasingly calls to eliminate federal border enforcement. What would happen if we did that?
The border's a dangerous place. People are coming up from all over the world through Mexico and other places, and you would have a much different situation in these big border cities. if the Border Patrol wasn't there, if the state, local, federal law enforcement wasn't there protecting people.
So there's been a debate in the last couple of days over the degree to which the government of Mexico helps the United States control the flow over its borders. You heard calls in the Mexican legislature yesterday to stop all cooperation on border questions with the United States. If that happened, what would our borders look like?
We have a strong relationship with operators and individuals, both at the political, the strategic, and the tactical level with Mexico. It's essential for us to share with them specific information. It's essential for them to tell us what's going on, what they're seeing. They do provide services for us on their southwest border,
yes,
on their southern border, and that's important. It's been important over these last several years.
Is this caravan that we've been reading about still on its way? Are members of it still coming? Do we know the answer?
The latest we're hearing is that it's being dispersed for lots of different reasons. People are choosing to take their own path. Mexico is helping settle some of those folks, and they have repatriated a number of them.
So apprehensions at the border are higher than they were last year. Why is that?
From March this year versus March last year, over 200%. What we're seeing is loopholes in current law and policies that exist now in the United States are actually encouraging people to come as families or unaccompanied minors to the border. There's also an economic the economy's better in the States.
Right.
And so people are coming for that reason also. But because of these policies and the way the law is constructed, lots of people are coming as part of a family or as a minor, and they're being released into the United States. That encourages more people to take that dangerous journey. That's why we're trying to do everything we can to put our plans in place. That's why this new capacity coming our way we're looking forward to that.
Let's say someone comes from Central America, takes the beast across Mexico from Honduras, for example, and makes it to the Tijuana border crossing. What happens then? Can that person be sent back? Is he brought in, processed? Where does it go?
So when they present themselves to an immigration officer, either at the port or between the ports where the Border Patrol works, they're taken into custody. They're afforded their rights under the administrative process to have a removal hearing, to have an administrative judge decide whether they can stay in the United States or not. But because they're from a non-contiguous country, Honduras is quite a ways away, while they're set up for that hearing, oftentimes they will claim asylum, fear to return back to Honduras. And so they're released under that condition that they'll come later to a deportation hearing. And the show rates for those hearings is very, very low.
I bet it is.
And so you have this cycle that's in the law, these loopholes, people are exploiting that, smugglers are exploiting that, criminal cartels are taking advantage of that and using it to raise funds on that journey. They're smuggling these folks.
The honor system doesn't work on Halloween, and it doesn't work on the border, I would say. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Harmeet Dillon is a civil rights attorney in the state of California. She joins us tonight. Harmeet, you've been involved in a number of suits with the state over immigration-related questions. I want to ask you about driver's licenses. 1 million of them now issued to people in California illegally. California politicians are bragging about this as if it's an achievement. What's the purpose of this?
Well, the purpose of it, Tucker, is to respond to a lawsuit that was filed in Southern California a couple of years ago, and the settlement of that lawsuit led to this law. And the idea by the proponents of this is that if people have driver's licenses, then we have some information about them. They have to pass the same type of a test as other drivers, and they have to get insurance, et cetera. But in reality, what you have is, I mean, these are people who are self-identifying, and number one thing they have to prove or state on the application is that, hi, I'm not here in the country legally. And so that's the premise. And then you have to think about everything that flows from their interactions with the DMV flowing from that premise. I've already broken some laws. I'm here illegally. I'd like some benefits from you. And as we all know, that's a slippery slope. Eventually, they're going to be asking for more benefits, and they're getting them in California.
So I don't think any politician on either side does anything unless it's part of a larger plan. I mean, there's a purpose to this. What's the purpose to this? It's not about driver safety.
Absolutely. Right. Well, the goal of the Democrats who are pushing this is obviously to get votes. That's number one. And they're going to have a built-in voting bank if they succeed in giving more and more benefits to aliens, illegal aliens in our state. And, you know, what was interesting to see in the recent discussion about DACA is that when the president offered a path to citizenship that was 10 years or 12 years away, all of a sudden Democrats lost interest. I think that they're very interested in harvesting this bank of voters for the immediate future, and they're not interested in any compromises. And, you know, as a Republican, frankly, I don't love the idea of any folks here who are here illegally getting citizenship. I can see some rationales for for some people having some sort of a worker's status or what have you. But that's really the agenda here. And, you know, the agenda is permeating to every level. In the UC system, for example, we are seeing illegal aliens being granted a reprieve from a $1,000 tuition increase. So if you're an out-of-state student who comes here and pays an exorbitant fee to attend UC Berkeley, you have to pay $1,000 extra. If you're an illegal alien, you don't. So that's an equal protection issue as well. And, you know, who thinks that the DMV is going to be doing a great job of maintaining the sanctity of our voting rolls? That's another thing that's happening, is that we're having automatic voter registration through the DMV. And all you have to do there is simply say, I'm a citizen. It's an honor test. It's an honor test being presented to a population, 7% of which are admittedly here illegally.
Well, that's exactly right. Right. And the whole point of it is to abet voter fraud, obviously. Thank you. Harmeet Dillon, great to see you.
My pleasure.
The state of New York is now pressuring credit card issuers to block users from buying guns or ammunition. Could corporate America collude to eliminate the Second Amendment? Well, of course, they are doing that, and we've got details for you. Mark Stein joins us next. Well, for the time being, the biggest threat to your Second Amendment rights, guaranteed to your ancestors over 200 years ago, isn't actually lawmakers or kids from Parkland you see on cable television. It could be big corporations. Last month, Citigroup demanded that all its business partners restrict gun sales. Now, in the state of New York, the state comptroller, Thomas DiNapoli, has just sent a letter to Visa, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and 6 other financial companies saying they ought to explore the possibility of blocking credit card users from buying guns, ammunition, or firearms-related accessories. Meanwhile, some towns are acting as well. Deerfield, Illinois, north of Chicago, has just passed a ban on so-called assault weapons. Every person in the town is required to give up them, and those who don't will be fined $1,000 a day. Mark Stein is an author and columnist and joins us tonight. So, Mark, I mean, both these stories are sort of a piece, and they're both interesting. But the second one first. If you were to, as Deerfield has, ban the possession of weapons that are currently held by law-abiding people, what would that look like? Wouldn't, at some point, you'd have to go door to door, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think you do, and I would be surprised, even in the most liberal jurisdiction, if you can make the case that a $1,000 a day fine bears any relation to the offense. I don't think that will stand up if anybody's minded to contest that fine. And I would advise people to contest it too, because I think that is absolutely outrageous and is intended basically to intimidate people into giving up something which the day before yesterday was entirely lawful for them to have.
Ultimately, all of these conversations come down to force. You're going to have to start making people do things, law-abiding people, American citizens, things they don't want to do. And a lot of the pressure to control seems to be coming from corporate America, which is hard for some conservatives to get their heads around because they think, well, they're on our side, we're on their side, we're for capitalism. But things have changed, it seems like.
Well, I think that's what's interesting about the New York proposal. If you want to get rid of guns, if you want to curtail access to guns, do you do as John Paul Stevens, the former Supreme Court honcho, suggests, and repeal the Second Amendment? That's never going to happen. So instead, you get corporations and lean on them to, in effect, do an end run round the Constitution. And if you look at what's happened with the way corporations, for example, are quite happy to collude in restricting freedom of expression. We've seen over the last year PayPal and other merchant processors quite happy to eliminate customers on ideological grounds. I think it's at the moment it's technically difficult. I mean, if you go into Walmart and use your MasterCard, they can't technically tell whether you're buying a couple of Twinkies and a blueberry muffin or a firearm. But once they can get past that hurdle so that a bell goes off and your normal credit card won't work when you buy a firearm, they will have gone a long way to denormalize gun ownership and Second Amendment rights. And that's
of the population that generated 91% of the support in favor of the pro-government, pro-Soros operation that would have restricted the independence of the judiciary. You know, like all strongman governments, they don't like independent judiciaries.
Right.
So they were trying to reform the judiciary in a way that would have brought it under control of the socialist government there. And what's troubling is that obviously Soros needs no taxpayer money to do any of this advocacy work. But the State Department and USAID is partnering with Soros and basically allowing Soros to set our foreign policy agenda. And then secondly, Soros's operations, according to these documents, were allowed to come into the State Department and provide technical reviews of other applications for other government money in Albania.
But, I mean, George Soros hates the United States, and I'm judging that by the projects that he funds, all of which are designed to change the country as it is now or to thwart U.S. interests. So why in the world would any State Department give money to a Soros-funded operation?
Well, it's not only in Albania. We have had four lawsuits at one point. Albania, Romania, he's active in Hungary, Guatemala, Colombia. They're very, very active, and it doesn't take a lot of money to have a big impact in these countries, and the governments are under assault from the Soros State Department unity effort to bring socialism and stop anything in the area of reform, constitutionalism, the sort of things that Americans would be comfortable with. The Soros groups aren't. And, you know, look, he's a billionaire. He doesn't need the money, and when you fund him in one place, it means he has more money to spend elsewhere. So if you don't like what Soros is doing here at home, you should know it's being indirectly subsidized thanks to the State Department and USAID, at least as long ago as 2016.
So Soros is getting State Department money. Planned Parenthood, which is an arm of the Democratic Party, gets $500 million a year in taxpayer funds. Is there any right of center or pro-America group that gets any taxpayer funding of any kind?
Well, I think most of them don't think to ask for it. But certainly the State Department is not terribly interested in funding groups that are antagonistic to their agenda abroad. And this is kind of another way for the State Department to stick it to the Trump administration. Yeah. Because some of this activity was taking place in early 2017. Again, attacking the idea of an independent judiciary in Albania. This is your tax dollars at work, and we had to sue to get the records.
The more you know, the more appalling it is. And thank you for bringing this light. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Big tech addicts you and your children to its products. It takes your private information and even empowers our military's enemies. What can be said in its defense? The latest part of our powerful tech companies already know more about you than your parents do. They share that information with others. They make billions doing it. Just today, Facebook admitted it gave data on 87 million people to Cambridge Analytica. No big deal. Tech companies drive economic inequality. They've done that a lot in California. They collude with one another to suppress free speech, while their CEOs demand an end to gun rights from behind a wall of armed guards. They create addictive services and deliberately get children hooked on them. Then they'll brag about how they'll be able to buy themselves immortality in the end. They're even creating new risks for national defense. So what defense can be made of the tech industry, which increasingly occupies a central place in our lives? Dean Garfield is president of the Information Technology Industry Council, and he joins us tonight. Dean, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, I think.
So there are a lot of ways.
I see you're a big fan of ours.
Well, you know, there are things about, I mean, these companies are successful because they're amazing. Google is an amazing product. Facebook is an amazing product. I would never deny that, and they're American companies, so I'm proud of that.
Right.
But there's a massive downside that has been suppressed, and I could name a lot. Here's just one. The more you use Facebook, according to study after study after study, the less happy you become. We've seen a massive spike in suicide rates, especially among kids. I'm not saying they're driven by Facebook. I am saying we should take a close look at things that are affecting kids' emotional well-being. These are credible studies. You're familiar with them. How is this different, an addictive product that hurts people, from cigarettes?
Well, I think it's quite different from cigarettes in that there is demonstrated evidence that smoking nicotine is addictive and is bad for your health. I don't think that evidence exists for Facebook or other social media. But that being said, most of the companies that we represent understand their responsibility to society and are making sure that they're evaluating what's going on and taking steps to make sure that it's not doing harm.
There's no evidence. Okay, so here's Sean Parker. He's the founding president of Facebook. Here's what he said November 9th, and he described his company. It's exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. It literally changes your relationship with society, with others. It probably interferes with productivity. God knows what it's doing to our children's brains. But we do know, because the Journal of Epidemiology found that, quote, the more people the more people use Facebook, the less healthy they are and the less satisfied with their lives, especially true of children. Study after study after study. So we know it hurts people, unless we think science is invalid, and we know that it was designed to be addictive. So how is that allowed?
I don't think we know that it's designed to be addictive. And as well, the people who run and founded those companies didn't create them with addiction or doing harm in mind. They created them to do something pretty phenomenal, as you noted, which is to deepen social connections.
But that hasn't happened. I mean, there's no study
How
that
can you
shows.
say when there are 2 billion people
I'll
on?
tell you how. Because there's not a single, and we've looked at it pretty closely, there's not a single study that has shown that the more you use social media, the more connected you are to people. You may communicate with them more, but in no true sense are you more connected. In fact, you're more isolated, and that's what these studies, and I have all of them, 2015, University of Missouri, 2013, a huge one, 2016, all these show that social media use decreases life satisfaction because it alienates people from each other. Why won't the companies admit that?
My sense is that, and my view is that there is little reason to admit something that's still quite nascent and still being studied. I think there's a lot of conversation about the neurological implications and a deep desire to get to the bottom of what the implications are, and if there is a problem, then to do something about it.
How much money is Google, for example, or Facebook spending on researching this? I don't think any of these studies were funded by the industry.
I don't think so either.
Right. So it doesn't sound like they're taking their responsibility seriously. Let me ask you a macro question, which is this.
I wouldn't say that at all. In fact, I adamantly disagree. I think the companies do take this seriously. That's why.
How much are they spending studying it?
I don't know. That's not to suggest that they're not studying it.
Right.
In fact, in all of the discussions today about legislation around these issues, like the Honest Act, most of the response from the companies have been not adamantly opposed, but let's have a conversation about what the implications are.
But we're
solution.
billions and billions and billions and billions of profit dollars into this. It's been going on for more than 10 years. There's been evidence for a while that it might be harmful. Why haven't they taken the lead in this? Because they don't care, right?
Wrong.
Wrong. Wrong. Okay. Well, I hope you'll come back. Look, anytime you want to come back, we've hit the tech companies really hard, and if there's countervailing evidence, I really want to see it. So if they have initiatives to address these things, I hope you'll come on. You'll always have space here to talk about them.
Absolutely. I welcome
Great.
that.
Thank you very much. Time for Final Exam. Fox regulars face off with one another on the news of the week. Have they paid attention? You'll find out. Time now for Final Exam, where our incisive questions will separate the wheat from the chaff, those who've been paying attention to those who have not been. This week's defending champion, Fox News weekend anchor Elizabeth Pran, who undid Peter Doocy after his short reign last week. Her challenger tonight, Brett Larson, Fox News Headlines 24/7 anchor, a frequent tech correspondent for the show, and an excellent one. Does he have time to pay attention to the news? We're about to find out. That, by the way, is the coveted Eric
Does he have time to pay attention
mug.
to this?
He may win that. The winner gets that. All right. You know the rules, Elizabeth, because you're the reigning champion. Brett, I'm sure you're a weekly viewer of this, but in case those at home don't know, hands on buzzers. I ask the questions. First one to buzz in gets to answer. You have to wait until I finish asking the question in order to answer it. Each correct answer is worth 1 point. Each incorrect answer detracts a point from your total. Best of 5 wins. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
All right. Question 1. We're going to start with a complex one. Multiple choice.
Oh, okay, good.
President Trump has revealed his nickname for former President Barack Obama. Is that nickname A, Mr. Nice Guy Obama, B, Crafty Obama, or C, Cheatin' Obama?
I have no idea.
Oh, I'm going to go with Cheatin' Obama.
You're going to go with Cheating Obama. Cheatin'.
Cheatin'.
N apostrophe Obama. Is Mr. Larson correct? Roll tape.
Thank you to Rasmussen for the honest polling. Just hit 50%, which is higher than cheating Obama at the same time in his administration.
Okay, that's
So what does that mean? We're not going to ask.
just beginner's luck. That's what that
I didn't
means.
know. I really didn't know.
I did very well in multiple choice in high school.
Yeah, that's
how I
the SAT
graduated.
master.
I mean, I would have guessed it, but
Question
I didn't know
2. A CNN reporter went off the deep end this week and started yelling in front of kids at the White House Easter egg roll. Which reporter was that? Elizabeth Pran.
Jim Acosta?
Jim Acosta, chief White House correspondent at CNN. Was it Jim Acosta, ladies and
Am I
gentlemen?
right?
Chief White House correspondent Jim Acosta facing some backlash for
I just
shouting
wanted to know, right?
questions about killing DACA at President Trump while he was coloring with his son.
President, what about the documents? They worry about what's going to happen?
Didn't you kill DACA, sir? Didn't you kill DACA?
Did you kill DACA? Guilty of killing DACA.
The Easter egg roll can be a very emotionally charged event.
Yes, it can.
The bunny, the glasses.
There's a bunny that looks very...
Yeah, especially when there's a DACA murderer on the loose. Someone needs to call him to justice. Jim Acosta did. Question 3, another multiple choice. Oh. Scientists just announced a major discovery overseas. Footprints belonging to massive extinct dinosaurs, some as long as 50 feet, were found in which country? Was it A, Scotland, B, Spain, or C, Sweden?
Right. Scotland.
Scotland? You don't think it would be Sweden? Let's find out. Well, that was pretty certain.
Scientists say they've discovered dinosaur footprints in Scotland, found dozens of fossils that belong to the early sauropods, the largest animal to ever roam the Earth. 49 feet long, 10 tons in weight.
Step up my game.
The sauropod, a fan of beer.
Oh, what?
Thus found in Scotland.
Are you?
I'm impressed.
I am.
Nessie Prince. Wow, okay. Question, hold on tightly, Elizabeth Prince.
Jeez.
2-1. Question 4. Steven Spielberg says he may remake one of his big 1980s franchises and change the iconic male lead to a female. Which well-known character is he talking about? Brett Larson.
Indiana Jones?
You're in fuego tonight.
Yes,
Indiana Jones, no hesitation at all. Was it Indiana Jones or is it E.T.? We'll find out.
Big-time Hollywood director Steven Spielberg says it's time for a woman to play one of his most iconic movie characters.
I thought it would be
Spielberg believes Indiana Jones is ready to take on a new form when Harrison Ford steps away from the role.
I just don't know if you can. Would it be a skirt? Like, how would that work?
Well, that's right.
Well, they
and really, the
changed the
question
music?
should have been phrased, having run out of any new ideas.
Yeah,
right.
E.T. doesn't phone home anymore. He sends a text.
Yes, he does.
By way
Creepy
of
little guy.
Yeah.
All right, final question of the contest, indeed of the week.
no.
This is one of the weirder stories we've ever covered. Covered with quotation marks around it. Zombie-like animals have been terrorizing residents in the Mahoning Valley of Ohio, standing on their hind legs, baring their teeth. This behavior has prompted a police investigation. Which type of animal has been seen with these zombie-like symptoms? Brett Larson.
Oh my God. Raccoons.
Raccoons?
Zombie raccoons.
I don't know if that can be right. Let's roll the tape. Zombie raccoons. In the past week, Youngstown police have responded to more than a dozen calls of bizarre behavior during the day by these ordinarily nocturnal critters. According to one eyewitness, a raccoon has walked up to him as he walked his dog, reared up on his hind legs, and then poised to attack, abruptly fell back as though having a seizure.
Zombie raccoons.
I know.
That actually was going to be the Steven Spielberg movie. Zombie raccoons.
That was great.
You know?
And by the way, all those wildlife experts
watch
are never seen during the day. Totally false. Elizabeth Pran, you were a fantastic champion for a week.
Did you throw it on purpose?
Brett,
we may have discussed
Elizabeth's
this.
going to award you the
I know, I'm
coveted
going to
mug.
because I got one right.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a little embarrassed. It takes a lot.
I'd like to thank the Academy.
And all the little people
I'd like
made
to
it
thank
possible.
the 24/7
We will
crew.
see you next week. Brett Larson, congratulations.
Oh, and I'd like to thank Elizabeth Pran.
Elizabeth,
for,
you are always welcome back. Just on principle. That's it for tonight's Final Exam. I'm not sure what principle. Pay attention to the news every week. Tune in on Thursdays. See if you can outwit our hard news professionals. We'll be right back.